Hello again. It is November 25th, 2012, and this is my second video uh, explaining the Woodstock and Dead Sea Scroll connections. And previously I mentioned a passage in one of the Dead Sea Scrolls called the Damascus document, and in that crucial connection, it mentions the kings of Greece, and on the surface this might not relate to our modern times, but I would want to point this out to people, and that is which leaders in our modern world have never gone to college, and now what colleges don't have fraternities and sororities. And fraternities and sororities have their roots in the Greek culture, and so I'd just like to point that out and how it relates to our modern world. And also, as sort of a side note, Joe Cocker's band was called the Grease Band. Now this is a different form of Greece. It's spelled differently, and one Greece is a country in Eastern Europe, and the other is something that you would fry your chicken in or make French fries with. But they sound the same when you pronounce them, and so there you go. That's another connection. And so, and I also mentioned in my previous video that Woodstock was originally to be held in Wallkill, New York, but the people there protested, and it was moved to Bethel, the area of Bethel, New York, and White Lake, New York. And this is significant because way back when, in the late 80s, when I first began discovering these connections, it's something that sparked my interest personally, because my hometown is White Lake, South Dakota. And when the 20th anniversary of Woodstock was being noticed back in 1989, there was all kinds of newspaper clips and news tidbits that mentioned this Woodstock, and from this I discovered that it was held in the vicinity of White Lake, New York, and this sort of sparked my interest. And I think of it as sort of God, the power that be, sort of giving me sort of breadcrumbs to follow a trail. And so, and going by this, it really sparked my interest in it, and so I delved into it. And so yeah, my hometown is White Lake, South Dakota, and originally White Lake had different names. It was basically, to start out with, it was a railroad depot, and they called it Depot Number 36. And the reason they called it Depot Number 36 is because it was 36 miles away from Mitchell, South Dakota, which at that time was as major a hub as there was, and so they called it Siding 36, and because it was 36 miles away from Mitchell. And generally these trains stopped about every 10-12 miles to take on water to keep the engines cool. And so after, it was called Siding 36, and then for a while the name was changed to Windsor, Now, Windsor is a very popular name for whiskey, and it sort of I believe it's has roots in royalty in Britain, and so that's sort of a connection with the wine and strong drink, relating to the biblical passages and the Dead Sea Scroll. And then after a while, they switched the name to Yorktown. And so Yorktown made me think, well, there was White Lake, New York, Yorktown. There's sort of correlation. And then they finally settled on the name of White Lake. One of the main founders of the town, Mr. Hanson, there was some movement to call it Hansonville, but he was a humble person and he didn't want the town named after him, and so they named it after the lake north of town. And so then one important correlation again is the anniversary. 20 years after Woodstock, I began to discover all these connections, and 20 years is a crucial connection also. And if you go to my website, you can check out this information. I'm just telling you from a book that was made for the centennial of White Lake, and the centennial of White Lake was in 1982. And the centennial of South Dakota was in 1989, which was also the 20th year of Woodstock. And here's a page at my website where you can read and substantiate what I'm just told you. And so yeah, Windsor was the only brand of whiskey to make an official centennial bottle for the state of South Dakota. And so yeah, there's another connection there. These connections relate to me personally. And it sparked my interest to find more, because in the 1 Kings chapter 12, when it talks about Bethel being held, or excuse me, the festival being held in Bethel and in Dan, that just sparked my interest even more. And I don't believe that these connections identify me as being a saint or sinless in any way. I'm just merely a messenger of these things, and so that's where my thinking is with these connections. And so, drawing on the 20-year connection, the Damascus document also mentions the numbers 390 and 40, the number 40, and the number 20. And these same numbers are in Ezekiel in the Bible. And there's a story about White Lake, South Dakota. I was working part-time for a farmer back in, actually it was a trucker, and the trucker hauled hay bales to the hay market in Minneapolis from South Dakota here, and I was involved in loading bales onto this truck. And we went to a farmer's place. His name was Lewis Larson, and he lived in the vicinity of Forestburg and Woonsocket, South Dakota.